Thank you to American Financing for sponsoring this video.
Dozens of people arrested outside Immigration Court in Manhattan tonight, hours after ICE agents detained several people in its field office. It will be placed under...
So at this building behind me where you see this unmarked police car, there was a near riot as protesters got in the faces of federal agents. Agents tasked with safely removing people in America illegally, many of whom could be dangerous. However, as you can imagine, immigration enforcement does not go over well at all in New York because this is America's largest sanctuary city.
You will be placed under arrest on the charge of disorderly conduct.
Protests erupted into chaos Wednesday night outside the federal immigration court in Soho. Officers and crowds clashing over barricades. About 24 protesters taken into custody for charges that include obstruction of government administration.
People say, oh, let them come in legally. And when they try to come in legally and follow the court proceedings, they're being kidnapped.
This is Gestapo-like behavior.
Nothing can change unless the people stand up. We know that what we are doing is on the right side of justice.
They actually have psychologists that are training and coaching these migrants on what to say and what not to say. As you can see in Bill's video, initially they speak English and all of a sudden they forget English.
We do know a lot of these asylum claims are phony. It's just a fact.
The asylum program is a scam. They tell them what to say.
Demonstrators descended on an ICE facility in Soho, shouting and chanting, determined to block van loads of migrants from being moved out of the city. 23 were arrested.
So nearly 24 people were arrested at New York City Immigration Court, but what nobody's talking about is even though this is a sanctuary city, immigration law still applies here, whether local activists want it to or not. And like all sovereign nations, our laws say that if you come here illegally, deportation will be the end result. But sanctuary cities exist to stop that from happening, and New York offers illegal immigrants the proverbial red carpet, food, shelter, and even a room in a former luxury hotel, in the hope that those who are here without permission will figure out a way to stay in America forever. Which makes sanctuary cities like this part of an insurrection with the purpose of circumventing America's laws, which are designed to keep everybody here safe. And cities like New York that resist those laws have a lot of problems, especially with gangs like Tren de Aragua, who send their minions out on snatch and grab robbery sprees, where they sometimes encounter police and then go after them as well, just like they did in Times Square a few weeks ago. Yet now that ICE is here removing people who've lost their legal status, which proponents say was given to them illegally, local activists are furious. Which brings us to the real reason these courthouse raids are so important. When our laws are not enforced, you allow a criminal underworld to grow and prosper like never before. But by simply enforcing our laws and deporting those who don't have a legal right to be here, criminals everywhere will learn that if they value their freedom, they should probably leave on their own, something they can do today at any airport while getting paid up to $1,000. But as you're about to see, local activists are willing to do just about anything to make sure that doesn't happen. So here's where the riots took place just a couple of days ago. This is a multi-use federal building. It's got immigration-related services happening here. There's a Homeland Security office. But as you're about to see, the activism that took place on the streets here and resulted in multiple arrests was unprecedented. Not just because of how wild it got, but because the people that recently came here and stormed this facility are angry and all upset about things they don't understand.
Protests erupted into chaos Wednesday night outside the federal immigration court in Soho. Officers and crowds clashing over barricades. About 24 protesters taken into custody.
People say, oh, let them come in legally. And when they try to come in legally and follow the court proceedings, they're being kidnapped.
So what these protesters don't understand is every individual being taken into custody is here without permission to remain in America. In fact, most of the people getting arrested got here one of two ways. They either walked across the border when it was wide open, were apprehended by Border Patrol and given a court hearing, or they were flown directly into America by President Biden's CBP-1 program, which allowed folks to fly over the congested border and land directly in American cities and await their day in court. But both of these entry methods were illegal. People cannot just walk across the border. They cannot be flown in by the tens of thousands, yet these illegal programs are why the protesters are here. And they came to this building and attacked it because they're under the impression something very wrong is taking place. And they're right, something very wrong is taking place, but as you're about to see, they just happen to be on the wrong side of it.
The protests come hours after witnesses report several people were taken into custody inside the ICE field office in Lower Manhattan.
I've been working here for a couple of years, and I've never seen either this many agents, let alone agents dressed in plain clothes, wearing masks, pulling people out of line.
Wow, so if you want to see New Yorkers have a problem with masks, just allow ICE agents to start wearing them, just like the protesters. But the protesters don't understand the reason people are being deported when they show up at courthouses like this is because they entered the country through the help of a program that was never legal to begin with. And these individuals entered our country after the people in charge decided not to enforce our laws. And what most people don't understand is that the court cases and the charges that bring people to buildings like this in the first place, those are essentially a reward for sneaking into the country, because hand in hand with those charges, people get the legal right to stay here while the whole court process plays out. And once that process ends, if somebody doesn't have the right to be here, they can be deported. And the problem these activists have is their viewpoint is so skewed that when our laws actually start getting enforced, to them, it looks illegal.
Advocates say it is becoming increasingly common for ICE to arrest and detain migrants at their immigration court hearings.
It's a catch-22. You don't show up for your court hearing, then you're also then could be ordered removed from the country.
I'm not sure that's 100% true. How can it be a catch-22 if people can enter this courtroom and then get to stay in America forever? This is a court where they figure out what to do with people who are here and say they're claiming asylum. Also, the border was a catch-22 because no matter how you came in, you wouldn't be deported. You got to stay. But the other thing activists are wrong about is that ICE is not arresting people when they show up to court. That's not what's happening. No, instead they're arresting people after they leave court without the permission to remain in America legally. If people were being arrested before they walked into a courtroom, then they'd be deprived of their due process, but that's not what's happening. Everyone's getting their due process. They're getting their day before a judge. It's just not working out the way activists want. They want everybody who goes before a judge to be granted a green card. So they're being dishonest when they say that this is a catch-22, but what this reveals is that the entire agenda behind the asylum crisis and this whole argument over people being deprived their due process, the reality is the people behind this want individuals to get to stay here forever. They want an unlimited number of people to be able to come into America, and they want all of those people to get to stay as long as they want. No vetting, no criminal background checks, nothing. Just show up and you get to stay. But there's one arrest that recently took place which activists say triggered all of the mayhem that took place here just a few days ago. With everything happening in the economy, it feels like we're walking on shaky ground. Prices are stuck at really high levels, and it seems like nothing is affordable anymore. It's no wonder why many are relying on credit cards to cover gaps. But because of that, credit card debt is skyrocketing, and it's leaving a lot of people tapped out. But if you're a homeowner, you don't have to face this uncertainty alone. My friends at American Financing can help you take control. They can help you access the equity in your home to help you pay down that high interest credit card debt, giving you peace of mind and real savings. On average, people like you are saving around $800 a month, and they may be able to close your loan in as little as 10 days. Don't let the chaos of the economy get the best of you. Call America Financing now. It costs you nothing to get started, and you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments, giving you a cushion in this uncertain time. Here's what you need to do. Call 866-890-4844. That's 866-890-4844. Or visit AmericanFinancing.net/cash. So here we are at the ICE headquarters, 26 Federal Plaza, where there is also an immigration court. This is another location. Somebody without the permission to remain in our country could be detained. But it just so happens one such individual was recently arrested at a place like this, yet they were a high school student enrolled in New York City public schools. Apparently they were well loved and respected by their classmates. But this person's now in deportation proceedings because they're from Venezuela and the government says they're not supposed to be here. Yet that has triggered protesters in a manner that I don't think anybody saw coming.
The young Venezuelan man appeared for a routine immigration hearing and was taken into custody by ICE agents. He and his mother and his siblings have been granted temporary protected status under the Biden administration's asylum program.
He is a student, a hard worker, a family man.
So it's important to understand what these illegal migration programs were designed to do. They were designed to bring people into America, and the architects of these programs hoped that some of the people brought in, when it was their turn to leave, the general public would be outraged. And it was secretly hoped that people would get so angry they would vote for presidential candidates who would prolong the asylum crisis or make it permanent, to avert what the television tells everyone is a domestic tragedy in the making. However, what these activists weren't banking on is that most Americans now understand programs that encourage illegal immigration are a bad thing because of who it is that takes advantage of these loopholes and enters our country when they shouldn't to begin with.
Authorities say the suspects are members of a Times Square gang known as Diablos de la 42, described as an offshoot of Tren de Aragua, the violent Venezuelan gang. And the latest suspect arrested is only 16 years old. He faces 10 charges, including attempted assault, reckless endangerment, and criminal possession of a weapon.
So here you have gang members who entered the United States through some illegitimate process, and these guys are as young as 11. They're supposed to be in school too. But what's happened is they've come here and gotten swept into the very criminal underworld progressives in our country say does not exist. And yes, they're members of families, students themselves, exactly the type of person who, if deported, could be used by the media to generate mass outrage. But it isn't just that gang members illegally in New York have been able to go on recruiting sprees, getting people to join them from the very asylum seeker populations we've been told fled these gangs to begin with. Now, you see, at the heart of this is this whole temporary protected status. The people being deported after their court case ends when they lose their TPS, these are folks who have lost the temporary right to be here. And what activists really want is PPS, permanent protected status. And when these programs come to an end, people have to leave the country. Of course, only the truly law-abiding will do so. But activists aim to stop all that because here we are in a sanctuary city, which will give people a driver's license and help them establish themselves, while listening to the cries of activists who promise to protect them from ICE and tell them how badly they want them to stay here and be their neighbors forever. And look, if ICE doesn't operate at a courtroom, there's a real chance that some of the people leaving that courtroom might decide that, hey, I'll just become a fugitive in New York City and try to stay here forever. Why not? Everyone here is telling me I can do it, which is why there has been zero pressure to deport people even after they're caught committing the worst offenses.
Police say the first 5 suspects arrested were all illegal migrants from Venezuela, all repeat offenders that were listed in the city's gang database. 3 others are still being sought, police releasing these photos asking for the public's help.
Activists, they don't want to see these punks get deported. They don't think anybody that the Trump administration or ICE would say is a gang member is actually a gang member. They think these gangs don't even exist. They think these are just boys being boys. But what about this argument that activists are sticking to, that some of these people have no criminal record? What's up with that?
So, when the Trump administration tells you that they are only going after criminals, know that is a flat-out lie.
Yeah, this is what you call misinformation. First of all, if somebody snuck into the country illegally, that's a crime. If they were allowed to stay because whoever was in charge at the time said that, well, we'll hit you with some charges and give you temporary protected status and let you get a job and let you stay here while you're in the court system, that certainly doesn't make it legal. Also, if those in charge of our country decided to set up a smartphone app and fly people in by the hundreds of thousands, a program which should never have existed to begin with, and then the people associated with that program have their temporary time in this country expire, if If that happens and they go to a court like this and their due process ends with them no longer having permission to be here, why are activists upset? That's how the process is supposed to work. But the problem is activists don't want the process to work. They want everybody who's here to get to stay forever, and they don't care what that takes. That's why they're out there fighting. That's why they're screaming in the faces of officers saying that they're deporting hardworking men and women, when that's not the case at all. People are here on a temporary basis. When their time expires, the law has to be followed, and a judge will decide what happens next. What we're looking at is the epitome of due process, yet nobody seems to be happy about it. And here's the problem. If there's no fallback on that due process, if we don't make sure that it's followed, the mass of fugitives living in cities like New York will only grow, and that is just going to empower a growing criminal underworld. Not just the gangs that are sneaking people across the border or smuggling them through our country, but also the gangs that have infested our inner cities and sanctuaries like New York who go on to commit crime. And what most people don't understand is a lot of the people that are here, they're in the process of sending remittances back to their captors who brought them across into the country to begin with. Smugglers charge tens of thousands of dollars. Not everybody here has that, but many of the people working in restaurants or delivery jobs, they are beholden to a criminal empire, which most Americans don't even know exists. Which is why proponents say people without the permission to be here shouldn't be. What do you think about that? Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.